Good afternoon, pilot teachers, and good afternoon, students. Okay, thank you. Sit down. Okay, basically what we will do for our lesson today is we'll finish off with our work on scale. And this time it's calculation of distances using the three different ways in which we can use for the measurement of the distances, and that is through using a ruler. And when we use a ruler for the measurement of distance, it is usually a distance in a straight line that we would use a ruler for. A piece of paper we could use also if we don't have a ruler, and then we place that piece of paper against the linear scale. And today we are going to do a lot more work on calculation on distance, especially those that are not of straight lines. And the equipment or instrument I ask you to bring along for us to use today is that of dividers. So if you look at an example of what a divider is, just in case you don't know what it is, it's this equipment here. You find those with your mathematical sets. And it is this that we are going to need for the calculation of distance of areas on the map which are not a straight distance or a straight line, that is. Usually along rivers or usually along roads, it is difficult to get our ruler and just put between the 2 points to measure. So to be more accurate, we could use dividers then so that we can get an accurate measurement. But we'll go through the steps on how to use the dividers, and then you will be required to do some activities, especially on calculation of distances using dividers. Revising on what we have covered already or so far, we have looked at interpreting scales on maps, and there are three ways in which scales can be presented on a map. They can be presented in the form of a statement or in written words or written form. They can be presented in the form of a representative fraction or in ratio form, and they can be presented in a linear scale or a line scale. We know how to interpret those three already because we have looked at activities or examples to go with them. Also mentioned that the reason for why we need to know about scale is so that we can be able to use the scale to calculate distances. And yesterday we looked at using a ruler to calculate distance from one place to another, and you would have found that the activities that we worked on were mainly straight line distances. The first example we did on the board together, and that was looking at a distance between Leh to Kainantu, and we were able to find our distance by measuring a straight line distance using the ruler and then using the ratio given on that particular map scale. We were able to work out the distance on the ground. If you can refer to page 10 and 11 of those atlases, and if you can give me the scale on that map. What was the scale that was given on that map, which is on page 10 and 11? No, we'll have someone to tell us the scale on that map. Anita, scale on that map, page 10 and 11. No, Anita.
One is to 50 kilometers.
1 is to 50 kilometers. 1 watt is to 50 kilometers.
Centimeter.
Okay, if you had used the ruler to measure the linear scale, you would have found out that it would be 1 centimeter to 50 kilometers. But if you were looking at the representative fraction or the ratio given there, you would have found out that the scale was 1 to 5 million. And then it is our task to make sure we can convert correctly so that we can use that scale to calculate our distance. We found out yesterday when we measured the distance between those two places that it was a distance of 2.6 centimeters. And using the representative fraction or the ratio that was given, we were able to do the cross multiplying and then converting, and we ended up with a distance between Leh to Kainantu of 130 kilometers. We are going to look at the remainder of those activities you were supposed to complete for your homework, and I'll get a couple of students, volunteers that is, to come up and do their calculation and working out on the board, and as well as that, you'll have to explain to the class also how you would have got your answer. All our answers would be given in kilometers. Okay, and other questions or activities that you were supposed to have completed for your homework was to look at calculating the distance from Kavieng to Daru, distance from Wewak to Loringau, and distance from Port Moresby to Leh, and as well as that the distance from Karkar to Kimbe. We are going to use the scale on our atlas And the scale in our atlas, is 1:5 million. And that's the scale that you are going to use when you show your working out on the board on how you calculated the distance of those different areas. So we'll have some volunteers now for each of those activities. Someone to do the distance from Karkar to Kimbe. Volunteers? Rebecca? Okay, thank you. On the board quickly. We'll start from this side. That's from Karkar to Kimbe. Someone to do the distance from Kavieng to Daru. Kavieng to Daru. Volunteer. Next to Silo. Our friend next to Silo, you are going to do the second activity from Kavieng to Daru on the board here. Quickly. We start from this side. Vivek to Lorengau. Joshua. Oh, sorry, not Joshua. Caleb. Vivek to Lorengau quickly. And Port Moresby to Ley. Port Moresby to Ley. Yeah. Put on the top the places you are calculating the distance from, and then. Okay, quickly, the rest of you, you can come up to the front now and put up your working out, and then we'll get each one of you to explain once you've shown or put up the working out on the board. Go and get the chalk. There's the chalk out there. Caleb up front. You're going to do the other one. Have to wait until they finish, and they'll all go down there. You do your explanation, and then the next one will come up. Wait for them. Can we stay out there, wait until you've done the explaining on the side? We'll have each one of you to come up from there to explain. Rebecca, remove that too.
That's how I got my answer.
Mine was the distance from Kaka to Kimbe. When we measured it, we got 9.2 centimeters. So the scale was 1 to 5 million. So I went 9.2 times 5 million. And then I got 46 million. And then I divided it by 100,000 because 100,000 centimeters is equal to a kilometer. So I divided it and I got 460 kilometers.
The rest of you check your answer. About 460 kilometers? Okay, good. Thank you, Rebecca.
How I got my answer, the question, see, giving to Daru, I got 22.5 centimeters multiplied by 5 million divided by 100,000, and I got 1,225 kilometers. Sorry.
Okay, we check that answer. Okay, let's check that answer. Keviang to Daru measured 22.5 centimeters. We happy with 22.5 centimeters? Okay, good. The scale is 1:5 million. Therefore, he's used the scale, multiplied 22.5 times 5 million, and then divided that by 100,000 to come up with 1,125 kilometers. So the distance in kilometers, according to the scale from Keviang to Daru, 1,125 kilometers. Let's look at D. Caleb, come and stand on this side.
The distance from Ubek to Lorengau is 435 kilometers. How I got my answer is I measured it on the ruler. It was 8.7 centimeters times 5 million. So the answer was divided by 100,000 to get kilometers, 435.
Okay, before we go on to the last one, 435 kilometers. We all happy with that as our answer? Okay, good. And again, he's explained to us already how he got that answer. Finally, the last one, Port Moresby to Ley.
How I got my answer from Pom to Ley is I firstly converted 5 million centimeters into kilometers, and I got 50 kilometers, and then I measured from Pom to Ley, I got 6.1 centimeters, and I multiplied it by 50 kilometers, and I got 305 kilometers for my answer.
Okay, very good. Again, she's followed the different steps, but still she came up with the answer, the correct answer. Well done. So if we look at what is on the board, it simply showed us how we can calculate straight line distances using the scale to calculate the distance from the different points that we've been asked to calculate the distance of or from. Okay, good. I think you have no problems with that, the calculation of distance. The major problem would be the checking of the scale and making sure you interpret the scale correctly, because if you know what the scale of the map is, you should be able to calculate the distances properly or accurately. Okay, we're going to move on to the next thing that I'd like us to do today, and that is what happens if you don't have a straight line distance to actually measure. And this time we're going to look at some of the steps that you can follow for trying to ensure that you accurately measure the distance, especially if you are asked to find the distance of a river, which might not usually be a straight, running in a straight course, or a road which is winding. And if you are asked to find the distance, you now are not going to just pick up your ruler and measure, because it's no longer a straight line. It's now a curve. So here are the steps that you are going to follow, or you may need to follow, to help you calculate the distance accurately. Okay, first of all, the equipment, as mentioned earlier on, the divider. This is important. If you don't have a divider, then you might want to find a piece of string or cotton. And for the string or cotton, it might be a bit difficult because you'll have to turn for every small curve, and you might not be very accurate with the measurements then. But the divider might be a little bit more accurate when you're using for the calculation and also measurements. So we're looking at the information on the monitor. It tells us there for step 1. First of all, find the place that you've been asked to calculate the distance to or from. Say, for example, the road here that we are going to look at will be from, if we are going to go from Leh, or let's say from Goroka, and you've been asked to find the distance, not a straight line distance, but going from Goroka, following the road all the way to Medang. This is when our dividers become very, very important. So step number 1, we know which area we are trying to find the distance to. Checking to see that if it is not a straight line, then what we need to do is we have to actually divide that particular area that we want to find the distance of in what we call subsections. But those subparts or subsections must be straight line distances, so that when we put our dividers on to those areas, it is a straight line distance we are measuring and putting it against our paper. So first step, we divide the area that we've been asked to calculate the distance of into what we call subparts. Each of the subpart or subsection must be a straight line distance when we are measuring. Maybe on the board, for example, if I'm looking at finding the distance from A to B, when I mean to subdivide this into subparts and each part is a straight line, this is what I mean here. From this point to there, there's a straight line distance that I could measure. This is one subpart. The next one could be that because a straight line. Then the next one here, the next one could be that far. Depending on how many straight line distances I can actually measure that curve, and that becomes a subpart. So on the example on the monitor, we are looking at going from A all the way perhaps to B. So therefore, when I go from A to B following the road, I then start dividing into what I call subparts. So the first number given there, number 1, shows me the first section which I have divided if I had to follow the road from here and then go all the way up to Medang, that is. So one subpart is done, but that's not all. I will have to make sure that the full distance is actually covered. And covering the full distance, I might not have equal subparts because some of the subparts, the curves are too steep, or some of them you may go for a longer distance before there is a turn again. So each of the subpart, the divisions, or not the divisions, but the distance will vary depending on how many straight lines you can make as we are going along. Okay, so if we continue here, you see the example given, there's one subpath, there's a second one being put, a straight line distance that can be actually found between those 2 points. And you continue on until you go all the way from A, which is this point here, to Medang. And if you look at the example that has been given, you will find there's so many different subparts because we are trying to find a straight line distance in each of those subparts as we are measuring the distance. So for the point here, I have ended up with seven subparts, of which those 7 subparts are all of different distances, and they are all straight line distance between one point to the next. Then the next thing that I'm going to do now, once I have already subdivided that curve into straight line distances of 7 subparts, the next thing I do is I pick up my divider. When I pick up the divider, I am going to now put the point of the divider from each of those subparts or onto each of those subparts, say for example from the first stroke or dot that I've put here to the next stroke that has been put there, because that's one subpart. Find out how wide it is, or closer together it might be, and then Once my divider is stable or steady on that point, I remove the divider and I put it on a piece of paper. It would be better on a piece of paper because from the piece of paper, I will get the ruler and I will measure the distance. So if my piece of paper was here, I've already measured the first subpath. I put it there, and then I put a mark to indicate, or a pencil mark to indicate the distance for the first subpath. So it's here to there. But that's not all, because this is the first of the subpath. I have 6 more to calculate or to add to that particular information that I'd like to put together. So I do the same for number 2, the second subpath. I measure how wide it is with my divider. Knowing the width of that, I put that again next to what I have already recorded, and then I put in the second mark, and I label that as subpath 2. And I continue until I complete the full measurement or the length of that particular area I'm supposed to calculate the distance of. At the end, I would have a measurement for 7 subpaths on my piece of paper, because the 7 subpaths will represent the distance from A to B. Okay, and once I've done that for the whole 7 of the subpaths, then the next thing now I will do is I will check the scale of the map. And once I know the scale of the map, I could do what we have done here by measuring, picking up the ruler and measuring the length on the straight or on the piece of paper, and finding out what my measurements will be in centimeters. And then once I know the measurements on the piece of paper, because this is the subpath which I have taken out from the atlas or the map from using the dividers, then I know my measurements in centimeters by simply placing a ruler here to measure the distance. And then I can go ahead to using this method to calculate the straight line, or not the straight line, but the distance along the road from A to B. Are you following? Okay. For the example and the explanation that I've given you now, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to refer now to the map of Papua New Guinea again on page 10 and 11. We're going to do 3 lots of measuring of distance and using the scale to come up with the accurate or the correct distance. And the 3 distances that you will be asked to find or to calculate the distance of would be: 1, distance by road from Leh to Wau. Distance by road from Leh to Wau. That's the first one, first activity. Use the scale on your atlas to actually do the calculating once you found the distance. Number 2, you are asked to find the distance by road from Leh to Medang. Leh to Medang, that's number 2. Distance by road from Leh to Medang. And number 3, distance by road from Kainantu to Goroka. Those will be the 3 activities we'll work on in our lesson today. I'll repeat. The first one, Leh to Wau. Find the distance by road from Leh to Wau. Number 2, distance by road from Leh to Medang or Medang to Leh. And number 3, the distance by road from Kainantu to Goroka or Goroka to Kainantu. Okay, I'll give you at least 7 minutes for the completion of those activities, and then we'll go through correcting that together in class. There's a difference between a compass and a protractor divider. So. Is this my exercise book? Where did you get this from? divider? Yeah, that's it. No, it should be okay. It'll be okay. Do you have a divider? I told you to bring one. You could use this one, but return it when you finish. Do you have a divider? Oh, that's all right. If you can share one between three, that's fine. Have you divided that subparts? Do the subparts first, or the straight line distance for that first. Divide first of all into subparts. Okay, once you've got the subparts, then you can measure using the divider. Use a pencil. Maybe start from somewhere where you are confident that it's a straight line. That's it. So are you telling me that from here to there is a straight line? It's a bit of curve there. That's it. Okay, so you see that's 1, 2 already. Okay, this one maybe up to there. 3, that's it. To the corner there. 4, maybe to the end, that point here. No, that one here. 5, and there's one more 6. And then you come up 7, and then 8 here. Okay, so you have 8 subparts there to work on. You can work together, 3 of you work together. Do you have a divider? You don't have one, you can work with this one here. Have you got the subparts done? Okay, good, well done. Okay, there's 8 of, or not 8, but how many did you? 7, that's fine, okay. Going to work together, 3 of you. Silo, you work with Christopher. Did you divide?
What if the kids are like
Then you've got to make it small, because the idea is that the subparts must be straight lines. So if there's a small curve, you still put a line there to subdivide that. So that means your division is not correct, so you better, let me see. Okay. You've got from here to there, so that's 1 subpart. This is 2, that's 3, make that 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. Okay? So there's 8 points there that you're going to get there.
can't really go with the subparts?
Okay, then you maybe extend a little bit, yeah? See the next point that you're going to go, because your divider, you cannot close it. Yeah, you maybe use, otherwise you can use a piece of paper. Could use a piece of paper for those who don't have the dividers, and this is what you're going to do for the piece of paper. Give me your, Alright. You see, you go around in curves like that with the pencil, you measure. Okay, you see, that's the first pointer to that point. Okay, you remove the piece of paper, you turn it. Okay, this is the second point. You move the piece of paper to this point here. That's the third. Okay. It's the fourth one. You see, you can still use the piece of paper. I'm here. Okay, and you continue from here down. That's one more, and then you measure the length of that. Yes. Okay, some of the students are now saying that some of your dividers, the subsections are a bit too small for your dividers to go very close together. What you can do, if you find that that is a problem, you can use a piece of paper. And a piece of paper you turn on every curve as you go along each of the subsection. And that might also help you with the measurements, especially for those where your dividers cannot be very close together, as there might be some made of plastic, and also the metals are coming together and they are not allowing for that measurement of the space between or smaller than those dividers. You got 2.5? Don't press really right down with that, because for that, all you need to do is just measure the distance between those 2 points slightly like that. And if it is small, we can use a piece of paper then. Okay, there's only 27 that I got back. Okay, but I have 27 at least, two missing. Okay, you've got 2.4, which is okay, yes. 120 kilometers, fine, that's good, yeah. So do the next one then from Ley to Medan. Of just for one. Okay, you can do one, you can do the other one, and then you can share your ideas. But use a piece of paper rather than just waiting for the divider. So give the divider, someone else can do theirs, yes, and then you can use a piece of paper, someone else for the calculation. So one do C, one do B, and one do C. Okay, so that's number one done. You do number two, you do number three. Use a piece of paper. If you don't, you can use the divider. You use a piece of paper to measure the distance so that you all have the answers before we mark. So you go from Kainantu to Goroka and he does Ley to Medan. Again, we start. You're right with that, Anita? Okay, good. Put your paper on the table so that when you're measuring, it's not, because if you leave it on the floor, there might be some distortions. Say not distortions, but variations because it's not flat. Always measure distance, calculate distance, flat on the table. Goroka to Kainantu. And the other ones, A and B. Ley to Wow, Ley to Hagen, Medan. Okay, we're going to check the answers to those activities now. We'll start off with the distance by road from Leh to Wow. Note that the idea is that so that we can measure accurately even if we are not given a straight line distance, and especially by road or rivers, if you are asked to calculate or measure the distance, we could use dividers, but before we use dividers, you subdivide that particular area into straight line distances, and then once you have the straight line distances, you can measure each of the subpath using a divider and putting that information on a piece of paper, then your ruler against the measurements you've taken on a piece of paper to find out the distance in centimeters. Once you've got the distance, then you can use the scale to convert or to calculate the actual distance on the ground. Another way in which, or method that we could use if we did not have the dividers, we could use a piece of paper. And again, for the piece of paper, you subdivide that area again into subparts. The subparts are supposed to show straight lines. And then using the piece of paper, you measure each of the subparts on the piece of paper. Then use a ruler to measure the distance you have calculated or worked out on the piece of paper by using the scale also to come up with the actual distance. Okay, from Leh to Wow, what was the distance in centimeters? Okay, Leh to Wow, distance in centimeters?
90 kilometers.
In centimeters? Before you get 90 kilometers?
The measurement was 1.8. 1.8 centimeter.
Okay, according to our two friends out there, they got 1.8 centimeters. Our friends at the back, what did you get? Did you get 1.8 centimeters when you measured from Leh to Wow?
2.5 centimeters.
2.5 centimeters. There's a couple of students here with 2.5. What did you get? A couple of students here with 2.7. And then there's also a couple of students when I walked around with 2.4 and 2.2. So you see there is a variation. If we were accurate, we would have come up with just one answer. We are going to use, for the case of our example today, we're going to use 2.4 as the measurements that would have been taken from Leh to Wow. Now that we have 2.4 centimeters, the next thing that we need to do is to use the scale. And the scale of our map is 1:5 million. And similar to what we've done here, we're going to find 2.4 multiplied by 5 million. Can you use your calculators quickly? 2.4 multiplied by 5 million and divide by 100,000. And the answer that we should have should be 120 kilometers. So by road, it's 120 kilometers from Leh to Wow, according to how we have calculated. Okay, that's for the first one. Let's look at the second example. This time all the way from Leh going up to Medeng. We divide this into subparts of straight line, and then what would be our answer in centimeters? Moses, what was the answer you got in centimeters from Leh to Medeng? We have not done that. Anyone has an answer for Leh to Medeng in centimeters? Silo?
Mm-hmm. 5.1 centimeters.
Okay, 5.1 centimeters. We'll double check. Did we get about 5.1 centimeter for this distance from Leh to Medeng? Yeah, most students would have got around 5.1, 5.2 centimeters. We'll work with what Silo has given as 5.1 centimeters from Leh to Medeng. And now that we know the distance by or on the map is 5.1 centimeters, we use the same calculation again or method. 5.1 multiplied by 5 million divided by 100,000. And what do we get as our answer for the distance on the ground? Now, we're not going to call out. We'll get someone to give us the answer. Someone to give us the answer for the distance by road now after we've done the calculation. Dorothy, Lay to Medeng.
Um, 255 kilometers.
255.
55.
Double check, everyone. 255. We're happy with the distance then? Okay, so from Lay to Medeng, according to our calculation, if it is 5.1 centimeters, after we've done all the calculations here, we would say that it's about 255 kilometers. Finally, from Kainantu to Goroka, you check, if you've done your measurement, you might come up with 1.3 centimeters. Yes? Okay, so using that 1.3 centimeters, we do our calculation following the steps again, and we would end up with about 65 kilometers. That's the distance by road from Kainantu to Goroka. Okay, that will also bring us to the end of our lesson for today, and also we have now concluded our work on scale, and tomorrow we will move on to the new skill on contours, interpreting contours, and also reading contour maps. Class, if you can now stand up. To the pilot teachers, our keyword for today is divider, sorry. You can add that to your checklist. Good afternoon and thank you, students.